Welcome back to my channel. This week I will be doing my very last video in the very yellow flat, for which I am terribly excited. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to be going back home and finally getting this writing career thing figured out. I have many plans. So this week will be the last book review I've got for Edinburgh, and then I have to put together a new list of books to review, hopefully weekly in the States if I can manage it. I will do my very best to do weekly book reviews. These are not sponsored by anybody, they're not paid, they're just people who say, oh, I would really love if you would read and review my book. These are completely honest opinions, so if you're interested in that, please let me know. And in the meantime, let's get started. So this week I read a collection of poetry by C. Stephen Blue. This is his collection of poems called Wordsongs, and they're sort of like lyrics to a song, but without the music. I guess that's the style. And so I read the first book in the collection, and it was good. It's been a while since I've read poetry, that's not true. It's been a while since I've read contemporary poetry. I tend to read a lot more of the classics, and I tend to read them for very specific reasons. I don't tend to just pick up a volume of poetry and read it because I can. So that being said, I do like poetry quite a lot. It's just not my go-to day-to-day reading material. So this book, and I copied this down from the description, this book is done on a theme of the story of a young man living in the inner city who dreams of freedom and true love. So it's done in the style of a music album, and and specifically album as in like vinyl album, where there's a side 1 and a side 2. So I thought that was very interesting. It sort of divided the book into almost a before and after, but I don't want to say that because the poems throughout were all written at very different times, from about 1969 to sometime in the late 80s, I think. I don't have that exactly, but so the different time periods were mixed throughout, and while the theme flowed, I think the style and the cultural references definitely were a bit more, they tended to jump around a bit. The theme definitely goes throughout, and it does follow exactly what he said, but I noticed that for some of the pieces that were written earlier, that the themes were a lot more in line with some of the cultural happenings like the Vietnam War and the hippie movement than some of the later pieces. And I think that was an interesting choice. I don't know if it flows as well as pieces that were all written at the same time, but I think it also lends a different cultural perspective on things, because the general theme, trying to find freedom and true love, they're kind of timeless. And being able to see that throughout the different pieces, I think that was very nice, very interesting. So the poems themselves do have sort of a music rhythm to them, but not necessarily a Dire Straits or a Pink Floyd type of music, and I'm definitely dating my music preferences right there, because I tend to listen to classical or 80s British rock type things. Yeah, or some of the more modern indie stuff. So these poems were more along the lines of the songs that you find on the radio that you've never heard before, but they're catchy and they get in your head, and then after you hear them once, you hear them everywhere. And I think that was an interesting choice, because it sort of sticks in your head, and these themes are so common in the world and are timeless. I think that was sort of a way of letting the poems kind of stick with you a bit more. So the images that the poems bring I've said already are, you know, kind of consistent with this timeless theme of finding freedom and love. And I think that the idea of this inner city young man kind of does show through a bit, but it also doesn't, if that makes sense. It's kind of the poetry's much more elaborate to talk about sometimes. I would say that the themes of freedom and finding true love show up a lot more than this idea of the young man living in the inner city. And that could just be my perspective because I am A, not a young man, and B, not living in the inner city. So maybe there's something I'm missing there. I'm not sure, but I still think the poems are. I think they're good. My one critique is that I can tell what the author is trying to say through these poems, but I'm not incredibly moved by them. They don't give me that resonant emotional response that I would expect from poetry, and I don't know if that's because it's the music style and the music style that the poems mimic, because I don't tend to be moved by sort of those more modern kind of catchy tunes that get in your head a lot. I don't know if that's it. So I would say that lack of emotional response is probably my biggest critique, and it's not anything that can necessarily be fixed. And unfortunately, that's just a personal preference for the style that it's been written in, and the images that are conveyed that I may have missed because of my background. I'm not sure. So on the whole, I would say it's a very good piece. This is a first in the series, and I don't know how many more there are. I'm sorry I didn't do that research before I read this book. I would say if you're looking for some poetry, this is definitely a good one to pick up if you're looking for more of a contemporary style. So I think he has a goodly number of other poems out there and poetry collections, not just the ones that are done in the Wordsongs style, but I will double check. So as per usual, all of the links are going to be in the description box below, and if you're interested, please do go check out all of his works and all of his social media and whatnot. I think that I would like to explore some of the newer pieces and see what cultural themes kind of come through in that, because of the way that they showed through in these pieces that were written before I was born, to be frank. I've studied these periods and I can tell what's going on, but I don't necessarily have that connection, and that's probably part of my problem. So yes. Anyways, that's what I've got this week, and next week I will not be in the Very Yellow Flat. You will no longer see this fireplace behind me. So if you're interested in having your book reviewed, please let me know, and otherwise I will see you next time. Bye.